Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. We are in week 3 of our Road to the Election series. Joining me again are Ndidi Amadi and Ian Felchlin.
Hello.
And our special guest today is the executive director of the LA Democratic Party, Mr. Drexel Heard.
Hello, everybody.
How's everyone doing?
Doing good. How are you doing?
You know, I'm enjoying the weather. Yes, I'm talking about the weather because I'm glad that it is sweater weather.
Me too.
It's beautiful outside.
It really, really is. It really is. All right, so let's just get to talking. Go back and let's talk about the last presidential debate that we saw. They were, Trump and Biden were in the room together. And I tweeted this out that I was a little worried that Trump was very, very calm in the beginning. That ended very quickly. But I noticed that there were a lot of people saying that they felt like he won because of his demeanor, which I think is laughable. But under his calmness and his laid back demeanor, he was still spewing a lot of lies. And he was still saying a bunch of stuff that, because he was calm, people are going to sadly believe. So, Drexel, I'm just going to start with you. What were some of your takeaways from the debate?
Oh gosh, that seems like a lifetime ago already.
Which one was it? Yeah, just a few days ago. Yeah.
Look, I mean, I thought the debate was obviously we only had 2 debates between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I think when you set the bar really low for Donald Trump, he can somehow meet it in terms of just being not Donald Trump. So in this case, he was calm the whole time, but like you said, didn't really say anything of substance. He tried to, from the jump, do his normal attacks on Joe Biden, but they kind of fell flat because I think the vice president was ready. The one thing I think people forget about Joe Biden, he's actually a decent debater, and he's been doing it for a long time. So, so it's not that. I think Joe Biden did exactly what he was supposed to do, and that was close the argument, and I think he did that. And I think that when you're the good thing about the vice president, he's constantly speaking to the concerns of the American people, whether and really making the case about the president's inaction on this pandemic. And the reality that this is Scranton versus Park Avenue, that Donald Trump isn't the man of America, of middle class America, that he is out there, putting people's lives at risk, not only during the pandemic, but pre-pandemic. I mean, he has somehow made America less safe while trying to prove that he can make America safer. I don't know how you do that. It's truly remarkable, actually.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And I think that's really what it comes down to. Are you safer in Donald Trump's America than you were last year? The answer is no.
Well, do you think there's an argument to be made that there are some people that think that they are?
How?
That's what I'm asking. I mean, that's what I'm curious.
I don't know. I suspect that that there are white Americans who feel safer under Donald Trump because there is a last minute cling to power. Sure.
Yeah.
But those times are coming to a close.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to that is the entire reason that Donald Trump was elected president in the first place, because this is that last ditch effort as we go into a generation that is going to be predominantly mixed races, where Republicans are consistently and will be the minority in terms of voter registration, where the religious right is the minority. I talk about that a lot in the sense of the Supreme Court, where you've got a minority ideology overtaking the majority of the of the cases, and certainly the important ones in the country. And that's what's going to happen with
Yeah.
with this Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett's probably likely going to be confirmed tomorrow,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so here we are.
Yeah. Ndidi, how did you leave feeling after the debates? Did you feel like you got the answers that you wanted out of Joe Biden, out of his performance? What was your initial takeaway?
Oh, I had so many takeaways. Can we first talk about talk about the moderator? I thought she was phenomenal. I thought she
Yeah.
handled herself extremely well, poised. She asked poignant questions that I wanted to hear addressed. So I thought she was amazing. I thought that Vice President Joe Biden was a little spicy. I love to see it when he's like that. Anytime he talks about malarkey, he's revved up and ready to go. So I thought that he came ready to debate. I loved all his answers. I love that he took responsibility for the crime bill. I love that he took some responsibility in regards to that. And he said that it was a mistake. With Trump, yes, he was calm in the beginning. I don't know if he was tired or whatever the case may be, but he did start to get agitated. We started to see the same old Trump behavior. And I don't think that he was the winner of the debate personally. I mean, I'm not a fan, but I also don't think that he did a great job. I still think he didn't answer the question about how we're going to get our coronavirus nationally. I don't think he still hasn't taken responsibility for that.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like he's trying to make a comparison between how we're doing and how European states are doing. Of course, they're doing better, but he made it seem like everyone's struggling and everyone's doing horribly. And that's just not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I didn't like what he said about race. How he
Mm-hmm.
said that he's done the most for Black people. And I'm a Black person. I don't see what he has done for me
Right.
or my
Right.
community. He
Right.
mentioned the crime bill. And I love what you put on Twitter. You can talk about what you put on Twitter, but I love what you put on
so
Twitter.
basically, and Ian sent me a tweet and I was like, I was literally just typing this similar thing, but it's like Black people exist outside of prisons. So that's not the only thing. When he says I've done more for anyone in the Black community, he only refers to prison reform, and it's like there's more to us than just prisons.
Well, it's because he's speaking to white people.
Right, exactly. And they want to be like, see, Trump's keeping you guys out of jails. Like, why aren't you happy with that?
It was such a good point. I was like, you're right. We haven't all been to prison. We're not
thank
all
you,
affected
Savior
by prison.
Trump. Like,
right. And then he talked about how much money he gives to HBCUs. I went to Howard. Like, you're not doing nothing. Many presidents have given money, afforded money for HBCUs. You're not the first person. When Obama did it, nobody said boo about it.
Mm-hmm.
Trump does it. I was like, you're not the first, nor will you be the last.
Right. Yeah. I think people don't realize how him saying that is actually the racist thing that he's ever said because of what he's implying. But yes, when he's saying that, he's not talking to the Black community. He is talking to the white people that want to feel good about their racism. Ian, actually, I want to ask you this. What is something that you wish Biden had said that you didn't hear from him?
I would like to have heard him say that, oh man, I just phrased this perfectly the other day to somebody, and now I'm trying to pull it up again in my mind. Maybe I can't even come up with something, because I think the biggest line that stuck out for me from him was when he looked at the camera and said, "It's not about my family, it's not about his family, it's about your family," and then talked to him about his family. I would have liked a little bit more elaboration on, all his statements about being an American president and not seeing red states and blue states are really great, and I think, like, the most powerful things he can say to me. I would have liked a little bit more elaboration about that, and more along the lines of, like, they can talk about their policies and the climate policy and healthcare policy and stuff, but I would have loved to hear a little bit more, like, intent to, at least verbal intent, to be bipartisan in developing it or trying to make it work. Not that he doesn't do that, but I think it would have been a great contrast to Trump, who was, all but treading water to every question, where Biden seemed to be able to pivot and take it and say what he needed to say. Here's what I told somebody the other day. I would have loved to hear him say that, regardless, that he would investigate the countries that sought to mess with our elections, regardless of who they were trying to help win. I think that could have been a really powerful statement and counter to any of the BS that Trump spewed, was to say that's unacceptable, and even if they were trying to help, me win, I would still retaliate. Obviously I don't know that anybody who likes what Trump says would have listened, but it would have been nice. And I do also think that the only person that Donald Trump beat in that debate was Donald Trump from the first debate. Like,
great point.
The idea that simply because he wasn't eating the walls with conspiracy theories that he won or is better, it's like an abusive spouse argument.
Yeah.
Oh, they're changed, they're different.
Yeah.
You know,
just because he didn't hit me today. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I get that that's what the media likes to talk about, because he was different, but that doesn't mean he wins. That's the lowest common denominator.
Right.
And that, you know, we should be holding everybody accountable to the same thing, regardless of whether or not they're a lunatic every other day.
Very, very valuable point. It's true. I think everyone was more shocked, honestly, than anything. They're kind of like,
probably right. Yeah.
You know, like, should we be scared right now? Because he's very, very calm. Obviously, it didn't last, like I said. But one thing that still bothered me is that when he did start to go off the rails, I was really disappointed by the use of the mute the mic, because I wanted it to be like mute him when he just starts going off about things, not just if he goes over his time. Obviously, it's over. There's no more debates. But I still think nobody truly knows how to handle him, because you don't know what you're going to get in any given day. But I do have to give props, like you said, Ndidi, to Kristen Walker, because I think that
she was amazing.
She was incredible. I think she was the best moderator that we had in the debates this far. So do you think the last debate changed anybody's mind? Or do you think people going in were pretty settled in how they felt and who they were going to vote for if they haven't voted yet?
Sorry.
No,
I think
Ndidi,
there's
go for
still
it.
a lot of undecided voters, just based off some of the articles I'm reading and some of the interviews that I've seen. I think if anything, if they're undecided at that point, that they would be leaning towards Biden. I feel like he answered the questions more directly, honestly. Maybe I'm biased, but I know that there's still some undecided voters.
Yeah.
Oh, I think there's about 5% of voters that are undecided right now. I think that's the number that we're all hearing, at least in the on our side. You know, and those are the five. I mean, that 5% is still a lot of folks. You know, right now we're over 50 million, we're over 50 million folks who have already early voted. We're 10 times more than in the 18 to 29 age gap from 2016 in terms of early voting so far, especially in key battleground states. Joe Biden is running neck and neck in 3 southern states right now. Kamala Harris is going to be in Texas later this week. And Joe Biden and they've been back in Florida consistently over the past few weeks, which is putting the president on the defensive, and then having to defend states that Republicans really shouldn't have to be normally defending. So sending president to Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, and Florida when there are other states, you know, is exactly what the Biden campaign should be doing right now. But in terms of undecided voters from the debate, I mean, look, a debate's not really going to change people's minds, because there's not a lot going on in debates. Debates are just shows. And they're good clickbaity things when we look on Twitter and Facebook, and it gets us talking about it with each other. There's not a lot of substantive things that come out of debates. I think the one thing that at least in this debate that was probably new for most people, or at least to be able to hear about it, is where Joe Biden was on oil and gas, and then how and an opportunity for them to talk about renewable energy, which has not really been talked about in any of these debates. You know, we also had 3 debates where no LGBT issues came up. So there's still a lot of things that that still have yet to be kind of talked about publicly. But the good thing about the Biden campaign is that they have really kept it to substance. You know, Senator Harris, you've got all the surrogates consistently out there. Barack Obama was out on the trail making his argument. Michelle Obama did her closing argument a couple of weeks ago as well. So I think that we're seeing, you know, a good disciplined campaign from the Biden campaign, and undecided voters probably are taking to that, which is good. The argument that I always make and is that what accomplishments have Republicans had in the last 2 decades, particularly the times that they've been in power? If Republicans have no argument, if you ever listen to Republicans debate, they're never running on their accomplishments because they have none. There's no, I mean, I wish I could point to the hey, Republicans have been, doing this couple of things, but they just have none. And to say that, the Trump tax cuts are an accomplishment when they have not helped a single American family is not an accomplishment. To say that you're court packing and putting people on the bench while at the same time trying to roll back progress in the Affordable Care Act and marriage equality and women's rights all at the same time, I don't know if that's something that you want to be running on as an accomplishment.
Right.
And so I think that, the more that people start to actually listen to what Republicans are saying, the more that, Republicans know that, and I think they're starting to level with the American people, particularly over these last few days. You saw it from John Cornyn, you saw it from Ben Sasse and a few other Republicans, and even these Mitch McConnell basically has kind of all but declared that that this is the last go round for them. And so I think that for Republicans, when we win in November, the Republicans probably won't be back in power for another 2 or 3 election cycles.
Hallelujah.
And I think that they know that, and because they're being outraised, they're being out-registered, not only just by Democrats but by independents and those in no party preference.
Right.
And they have allowed Donald Trump to consume them so much that this might be the time that they go the way of the Whig Party.
But so here's my question, because I agree with that, but my mindset is, if you see that something's going off the rails, why wouldn't you do everything possible to try to get it back on track? You see that Trump is so detrimental to your party and what you've stood for. Why have you just let him kind of just run his show?
It's arrogance. They think that they can manipulate things and manipulate the country and manipulate people's, awareness or attention spans to stay in power. And I think it's a really good point that they really don't have any accomplishments other than running against or trying to tear down Democratic accomplishments. And I think you can see now at, coming towards the election, that they realize they're backed into a corner and that people are maybe a little bit more smart and a little bit more tired of their BS than they had thought. And that their confidence that they can retain power is starting to slip.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. We saw last week that the U.S. hit its highest daily number for coronavirus cases. And I just recently, I don't know if you guys have seen it. I know Ian has just watched the Borat movie. And I was strong-armed into watching it by my husband. I was not happy, but then I was, because it was very hilarious. But one of the scenes that struck me was that there's a scene where Mike Pence is talking to a convention and they say, to date, we have only had 15 cases of coronavirus. It blew my mind knowing where we are today. And now we just reached the highest daily number of cases. What are we going to do to get past this? Because I still think, even in hearing Biden, he clearly has more compassion, and I do believe he will come up with the plan. But that's one of the things I feel like I didn't get a good enough answer from him or from either of them, is how are you planning to combat this moving forward? Because it is only getting worse.
I feel like the biggest challenge is that the damage that the Trump administration has done on this is not, I don't want to say it's not the lives lost, but it's the misinformation and everything that's happened because of that. Because now, if Trump loses, goes away, cut to January 21st or February 1st or whatever, what have you, there's a new administration, hopefully a new Senate, new Senate dominating party. They can do and have whatever plan they want, but there's going to be all these people that spent an entire year hearing not only false information, but new false information every couple months, depending on which way the wind was blowing and which way the president was going to piss in it. I mean, I think that's the real big challenge in front of anybody, is how do you combat the fact that so many people now don't know what to believe, don't trust the people that they should be listening to, and are not going to be welcoming to any kind of mask mandate or new restrictions or anything like that. I mean, it's a monumentally harder task now than it was 9 months ago.
Yeah, for sure.
No matter what.
Right. I think the other thing that was always so frustrating for me when I would see people talk about it, it's like, oh, they said this, this month, or now they're saying this. It's like, do you not know how science and data works? Like,
Right.
it's constantly evolving, and people, they're researching it. They don't know what this is. They didn't know what it was. So what they knew in March, now we're in October, it's going to be completely different set of data, and you just have to listen to the experts. And Trump is not that expert. Pence clearly was not that expert. So I know that Joe Biden doesn't want to, when he wins, issue like a national mask mandate, but I don't really see how not doing that it could be an option personally. That's just my
And
feeling.
I think that's where we went wrong, is because we didn't have a federal mandate. Every state was allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. Then you had a lot of southern states, let's open back up in May, and then they had to shut back down again. And people were going to school. Some people weren't. Some people started universities. They had to stop because people were getting highly infected. So it's like, and then you travel, you have interstate travel. And of course, things are going to happen because we're just allowed to do whatever we want to do. And then I have friends who live in other countries. One of my friends, she teaches in Ecuador, and she was like, in Ecuador, we could even go outside for like 2 months straight, and the law was the same. And then they're back open because everyone followed the same mandate. But us, we're so tied to our rugged individualism and our freedom and our rights that we're still stuck in the same quagmire. And November is next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, the White House has all but kind of punted. Even today, the chief of staff, Mark Meadows, going out there saying, we're not going to control the pandemic, because they never had a plan. They were never going to control the pandemic. But then he followed up with, by saying, what we can control is the vaccine, but they can't even do that because the president, every time he goes out there and says there's a vaccine coming, the companies that are making them are saying, yeah, we're not ready yet.
Yeah.
They have to go back after he says it, like, yeah, we're not ready yet. Johnson, nope, not ready yet. And so that is, to what was said earlier, it is the hard part that Americans are going to have to kind of wrap their brain around. But at the same time, the difference between us and a lot of countries, I know we try to compare ourselves to the way that other countries are run, whether or not it's in socialized medicine, whether or not it's in education and stuff like that, is that we have 50 states and some territories. And what we're talking about individualism, constitutionally, every state has the right to decide what it is they're going to do. The federal government can set guidelines, but not necessarily tell states how to function to an extent. And so, it's why the education while we set sort of guidelines for education, but there are some states that are falling behind because they have their own curriculums and their own sets of standards. So, I think that's where probably Joe Biden understands more than Donald Trump, is that there are certain things you can't do. Could you imagine? I mean, if the federal government could do something like that, don't you think Donald Trump would have utilized that more?
But I think they could have done. When it comes to our national security after 9/11, we, across the nation, we had to change the way we had to fly.
But the FAA is controlled by the federal government.
Well, and I think it's also, you made a great point about, like, the states all can kind of do what they want. So the challenge I think that Biden's going to have to do if he wins, is that he's going to have to go to, like he says all the time, go to the governors. If the governors don't want to play ball, go to the mayors. Go to the city by city if you have to, because the reality is, the problem that I see the Trump administration caused with this is they politicized it from the very beginning. Right. So it wasn't about what's true, what are we learning day by day about this virus, how can we protect everybody? It's how does this reflect badly on my re-election campaign, and who cares how many people die? And you have all these Republican officials, governors who kind of bought into that and just rode that wave. And now the problem is that no one's going to want to do what any kind of national mandate says if it's counter to what they've been doing before, even if it's going to save lives. I mean, it's going to come down to them having to work hand in hand, even with city officials, city by city, go around the governor. And that's a monumental task.
And you make a good point about, working with local government. I think people forget, and at the county level, we talk about how important local elections are every day. And if you remember, when the Paris Climate Accord came about and Democratic governors were signing on to it for their states and making national or certainly statewide pledges to combat climate change, the mayors that were in Republican-controlled states were signing their own climate pacts to, saying this is what our city is going to be doing. And so, yeah, Joe Biden's going to have to call up the more responsible leaders and then call out the leaders who are not stepping up to the plate. But the problem is that in America, almost 30 plus states are controlled by Republican governors. And so that is going to be the challenge that Joe Biden is going to have. But I think that where Barack Obama certainly did not have the opportunity because Republicans did not let him, where Hillary Clinton would have had a harder time just because being a woman leader, in America is equally as difficult, is that Joe Biden is kind of that everyday man that people actually just kind of like, and they might just tack on to, okay, Joe's calling us up now, let's get it done. And but I'll be really interested to see what Kamala Harris is going to be focused on. But I suspect it to be more on criminal justice and working with the Attorney General.
I think it's go ahead, Ian.
My last thing to mention on this is that it's a really the big challenge, I think, for a lot of people that are already not following restrictions and not wearing masks and stuff. You bring up 9/11 in Ndidi, and I think for that 9/11, if you were old enough when it happened, you saw it happen on TV. It was an immediate visceral reaction. We are being attacked. All these people died. There was probably more news coverage on anything than I can remember. I was 18 at the time, and you can still go up and look at the videos, right? You can see all the footage of the towers being destroyed. Coronavirus, even though it's killed, only several 100,000 people in this country, it's still an existential threat because it's not a direct, visceral gut reaction that these people are seeing. And I think that's the more I think about it, that's the real hill to climb, is that for some people, it's just not affecting them outside of being bothered by wearing a mask or not being able to do whatever they used to do. And we have so many people in this country that regardless of how many people are getting infected, people are just not seeing it directly streamed into them the way they did with a terrible event like 9/11. I think that's why it's so much easier for people to say, oh, well, it's not, it's not real. It's being hyped up, no matter what everybody can see everywhere.
9/11 is a more tangible thing.
Sure. And I think that's also what you saw in the George Floyd case. In what's his name? Chris, out of New York City, the Central Park, Chris Cooper.
Yes.
The Cooper case.
Yeah, Amy Cooper and Chris Cooper. Yeah.
There were, I think what changed people's minds and certainly got people a little bit more invested, because if I said this on, Malynda and I were doing something earlier today, if we are not in the middle of this pandemic, the George Floyd stuff would have come and gone very quickly.
Yes.
The other difference is that to talk about the things that police brutality and things like that, when you can't actually see it, people don't really, people aren't really in tune to that. However, then we got a video about what we saw actually happening to somebody laying on the ground, and then we saw life leave somebody's body actually on video. And I think that people responded differently to that than they did seeing a traffic cam that may or may not have been or whatever conspiracies people have about tapes being adjusted or video footage being altered or anything like that. You actually saw it firsthand from a first person experience, and so I think that is what changed other people. The same thing with Elijah McClain, same thing with a few other cases over this year here in LA County. We saw a journalist, the sheriffs go after a journalist, and those are the things that people are responding to. And I think that's the same thing with 9/11, is that people saw exactly what was happening in front of them. You can't see a villain like COVID-19 because people just don't know. I mean, it is
Yeah.
it's like a heart attack or high blood pressure, a silent killer, and nobody knows when it's going to creep up on you.
Yeah. I would say that's the only positive thing that has come from COVID is that people's awareness of racism has definitely,
That is true.
yeah.
We've been telling y'all.
Right. We're not saying this here. Right. But what I was going to say, you know, for someone whose ego is as vast as Trump's, and I've said this several times before, I'm actually surprised that he wouldn't take the proper measures to save people's lives because he already has such a savior complex. And I'm very surprised that he wouldn't want to do everything he could to ensure his reelection. Had he just acted correctly and accordingly in this pandemic, he might have actually gotten reelected. I do think that, because how would you not, like, oh, he saved all these people's lives. He did this for the pandemic. He did this, but he did everything wrong. So I'm praying that he does not get reelected, but I do personally think that if he had handled this the right way, he might actually be reelected next week.
I agree. It would have been a slam dunk, but he's too stupid and he's too like nearsighted, because it's all about how does he look right now?
Yeah.
Not how am I going to look in 9 months if I take control?
Exactly.
But the other point of that is Republicans haven't done anything in the 4 years that they've had.
Still on that point.
But that's
but they haven't.
It's true.
I mean, you know, if you, I mean, I've watched at least maybe 4 or 5 Senate debates during this cycle, and if you listen to them, they got nothing.
They're saying a bunch of nothing.
They're saying a bunch of nothing. And then when the moderators are asking them about Donald Trump, they're like ducking and diving, trying to figure out how best to answer that question. Yeah. Because, you know, they want to tie themselves to Trump, but not tether themselves.
Right.
But they are tethered. And we cannot let them forget that they have been tethered to this president for 4 years. And they have enabled him every step of the way.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, like, and I said this on the debates, I'm like, how many times is this man going to say he's going to repeal and replace Obamacare? How many years have you had to do something and you have not done a single thing?
And it's not even just him. This predated Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The Republican argument of repeal and replace was before Donald Trump.
Yes.
The Republicans were talking about it when John Boehner was Speaker. Republicans were talking about it when Paul Ryan was Speaker. And now they're talking about it here in 2020, and they still have not had. This has been 10 years since the ACA was passed. They have not had a single plan to replace the Affordable Care Act, or at least make adjustments to where they thought they were going to, other than killing the individual mandate.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't care.
They don't care. What were you going to say, Ian? Though you were going to bring up a point. You said, did you guys see?
Oh, did you see the Saturday Night Live cold open from yesterday? It was a take on the debate, and my favorite line was they asked, you know, the Trump character Alec Baldwin, like, let's see the plan. He was like, oh, I can't show you because it's being audited with my tax returns. And it's the same kind of thing though. Like, I think they don't have anything because they don't care, because their platform is running against the Democratic accomplishments, and or especially running against the Obama accomplishments.
Yeah.
And that's why they're never going to have a healthcare plan. They're just going to protect their own, i.e., oh, the coronavirus is coming. Don't panic, everybody. Turn to Wall Street and tell them to, you know, make smart choices to make a lot of money. They want to preserve the status quo, which is rich, white, old people. And they're just never going to care. So they don't have to run on anything because that's their platform.
Right.
I will say I'm not convinced that they want to maintain the status quo so much as they want to retain what little power they have left.
I guess, actually, that's a better way to say it. Yeah.
You know, like they don't care. The status quo, they don't care about that.
Yeah.
Because if they cared about that, you know, look, they didn't even change their platform from 2016. That tells you how lazy they are, first of all.
Yeah.
That they have no new ideas. The president, the GOP tweeted, I think yesterday or today, about the second term
plans.
and 2 out of the 4 of those was about space exploration. Now look, I'm a Star Trek fan, and I'm all for some space exploration. But if I don't see the Enterprise rolling up out of this Space Force, I would be very disappointed that we spent all that money. you know, and not on other things that actually matter.
That are priorities.
No one's going to afford a studio apartment on the moon, man. I mean, come on.
Exactly. You know, and so, you know, if I don't get beamed up in the next 10 years out of this Space Force, I'm calling every damn body. I thought this Space Force was a good idea. Because you're talking about an agency now that is now spending another and now added level into our already bloated Department of Defense budget.
Yeah.
So, look, give me a good uniform. Come on.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go.
Androids.
Well, you brought up 2016, so that's the last thing that I want to chat with you guys about. What are some differences that you see going into this election, and what are some similarities that actually make you a little concerned in this election? And Ndidi, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. For me, in this election, I think that voter turnout has increased, and I love to see it. I love seeing all the videos of marching bands at the polls. I saw a group of cowboys riding their horses to the polls. So I love I don't know if it's excitement or the urgency to have some change. I love that. I know in 2016, voter turnout was like 58%. It wasn't that great. So that's something that I see that has changed. I think people are understanding the urgency of now. Things that are different. I wish we had a better election season. It was very filled with a lot of hate to me. It was a lot of vitriol. It just didn't feel good. And I'm someone who's very civically engaged. It didn't feel good watching the debates. It didn't feel good following all the news clips. So I would say that it was more draining. I thought in 2016, we could have made history with the first female president. So I think that kind of like encouraged a lot of people to be more invested. So to me, those are the differences that I noticed.
Ian, what about you?
I mean, differences. So like at this point, and probably like a few months ago at that point in 2016, I was confident that Trump was going to win. It just, everything about it felt wrong in terms of like him being the outlier and Hillary's history and everything. And I mean, I voted for Hillary. I wanted her to win, of course. But I just had the feeling that he was going to win, just an inkling. This time around, though, I don't have a confident feeling either way. I personally think it's anybody's race. Still, it's going to be very tight. But I think that the real difference for me this time is the turnout, and it's the fact that no matter what, no matter who wins, so many people are amped up to vote, and that is very encouraging, regardless of who their vote is for. I do feel that a lot of them are going to vote for Biden, that they're going to vote for change and for difference, and that the Democratic side this time around feels a lot more united, probably because of the last 3.5 years. The things that feel the same to me are just the kind of things that feel the same with every election. It's the constant barrage of poll numbers in one way or the other. And not to say the polls are bad, because it's good information to have to know where you are. But I've always been a little bit weary of it, because it's kind of intangible, and it's not a, hey, we counted the votes. It's a, what did this person say to you? And that leaves a lot up to that person's objective bias towards who's asking the question. I feel the other thing that's concerning in general to me, not necessarily about the results of the election, but is the hate and the vitriol and the extremes on both sides. But truthfully, it's not like extreme defense of Biden. It's the right-leaning voters' willingness to rely on and use like blatant falsehoods and conspiracy theories and accuracies and things that have been debunked as reasons to vote for Trump, or reasons to just hate the other side. And that's concerning to me in terms of where the country is going, regardless of who wins. Because if Joe Biden wins, and if we take back the Senate, those people aren't going away. Their voices will be diminished, I think, and certainly in terms of who's in power. But there's still that feeling that all these people are clinging to this information that's just not true, and it's really coloring how they interact with people and who they perceive themselves to be. It's tribalism.
You know, I was going to say, I actually am grateful that we know who they are now, though, because I do think it was easier to hide when Trump wasn't in office. But another thing I was going to say is, you know, we talked about the Republicans and they haven't done anything, and it's really just about beating the Democrats. That's just kind of a reflection of how their supporters are as well. I think a lot of Republican voters rather, they know that Trump's terrible. They know he's not a good person, but it's more about making the liberals upset. And that is, it's own the libs. And you see that on Twitter often. And so, the hate and the vitriol, and they're not actually caring about your other American citizens just because you want to piss them off because you don't agree with them. I do think we're at new levels when it comes to that. And either outcome, I don't know how much that is going to change, to be honest. I don't. Drexel, what about you? Because you're always involved, very much so involved in elections. What are you saying? Just comparing 2016 and
now. Look, I think there's a lot of excitement around Hillary Clinton in terms of history making. I wish for Kamala's sake we would that she would have that same experience.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this pandemic has really changed that, and certainly, when Joe and Kamala win, they're not going to have the same inauguration that everybody else has ever had, and that's kind of sad for somebody like Kamala, who is that history-making candidate, VP, and so I think 2016 was so riddled with so much negative news about Hillary Clinton that I think, and I hope that people have seen that the media has taken a little bit of a different approach to Donald Trump. There's more Joe Biden. I've seen more cutaways to Biden events in this election than I did in 2016 for Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that I think part of what we're seeing in these voter turnout is also 50% the fact that nobody can go anywhere. What else they got to do?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Ain't nobody got no job.
Might as well vote.
And nobody do. The only thing they can do is go vote.
Right,
and I think you're seeing that spike. Which, look, it's shitty to say, but that's where we are, right?
Yeah.
Well, what are you gonna do today? I guess I'll go vote today. And so but then also at this time last year, what were we talking about? Jim Comey had just come out a second time. This was this time last election.
Yeah.
And so, we were constantly being bombarded with Hillary Clinton news that, looking back at it, you're like, oh shit, why did we have to go through all that? The things that are the same though, it is always going to be what social media tells us, and how we look at social media and how social media affects our everyday intake of information. Donald Trump has certainly utilized that to his advantage as best as possible, but I think people are starting to see through the crazy now more than they have in the past.
Well, he's showing way more crazy lately. He's
when you're on the ropes and you're about to lose, it gets a little crazier. The other thing that has remained the same is the Republican playbook, and that's not just from 2016. That is prior to that. The playbook has always been the same, and where Democrats have adapted to different types of situations that we've been in, and certainly, what we're not going to get, thankfully, is this Tea Party rise in the Democratic Party that we thought we were going to get after 2016. I think that some of our up and comers, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being one of them, have been very good at identifying the problem, saying it out loud, reminding people what it is, and still being able to unify the party at the same time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think that the more that we get that, the more that our party is not going to go the same way and that the Republicans have. And I think that is what we thought was going to happen in 2016 compared to what is happening now. We are seeing more surrogates, more Democrats invested in winning, and not just at the top of the ticket, but across down ballot races as well.
Right.
And how important that is. And we're having those conversations. I think more people are getting a quick civics lesson in 2020 than we got in 2016.
Mm.
And I think that's what scares. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, I think that's what scares a lot of the Republicans too, is you see people like AOC and all of the more progressive candidates progressive parts of the Democratic Party speaking out and speaking what their beliefs and ideals are, but they're then still actively taking part in the existing way things are doing. And that's, I think, very hard for Republicans to kind of juxtapose and live with.
Yeah.
And that's what's like, I think it was yesterday, I forget what show she was on, AOC, and they asked her about fracking, and she, said she has some very firm beliefs about it, but she'll be happy and honored to lobby Joe Biden about them if he wins. It wasn't he's wrong. It wasn't I disagree with him. It wasn't any of that. It was I have beliefs and I'll be excited to take part in the normal way government functions to get my beliefs across, which is not what the Tea Party did, like you said. Right. And I think that's very scary because they don't know how to reason with the Democratic Party, where you can have all these differing ideals. Some of them may be more extreme, but they're not breaking off. It's still one party.
And I think that's what you're seeing, what Donald Trump has tried to do consistently over these.
Yeah.
Like what he was able to do in 2016 was utilize the Sanders voter against Hillary Clinton, and try to build that wedge in between Sanders and Hillary Clinton voters, and make sure that enough Senator Sanders voters didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. That's not working this time.
Right.
Right. And he tried to do that even in this last debate with Alexandria Ocasio-AOC, and what did he say, AOC plus 3, as if that was going to be a problem for the Democratic Party. Cori Bush, who's running in Illinois, who's our Democratic candidate out of Illinois, who just beat the incumbent Democrat in the primary, said, well, we're going to be adding a few more folks to that plus 3. So I think that is what the Republicans did not expect in this election, which was that they thought that they were going to be able to divide us in the same way they have tried to divide us in 2016, in 2012, and then in 2008, by trying to divide Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama supporters.
Oops.
Right. Right. Well, before we wrap up, I have one more question for you guys. Do you think that, because we are seeing a lot of Republican support for Biden, obviously he's a seasoned politician. They know him. They probably have very good relationships with him. But how much do you think that the support for him is based on who he is or based on who Trump is?
I would say it's based on both. I think over the past 4 years, we've seen a lot of who Trump is. And like you said, a lot of them probably have relations with Biden. They know what type of man he is. So when the race comes down between either two, I think they're going with someone who they believe our country needs at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think that Joe Biden has been very consistent in his career about how well he works with his Republican colleagues. How he talks about Senator McCain, how he talks about working, across the aisle as much as possible. But that's what we've seen from Joe Biden, and that's why why they talk about how Barack Obama sent him. That's why Joe Biden was an effective vice president, because he could go to the Hill and talk to folks he could talk to folks that did not want to talk to Barack Obama.
Yeah,
for the reasons that we know why they didn't want to talk to Barack Obama, right? Right. So he sent old Joe Biden down there, talk to his friends, and see what comes of that. And I think that's what you're seeing in the Republicans right now when they're trying to pivot away from Joe Biden. I think you saw it in Bibi Netanyahu when this weekend when Donald Trump tried to get Bibi Netanyahu to go after Joe Biden, and Bibi said, I'm happy to work with anybody who's willing to work with us. I think you saw that in today in Vladimir Putin, who slapped back at this notion that something about Hunter Biden, that he slapped down that tall tale. And so I think that you're starting to see that the people that were protecting, that Donald Trump thought he was had allies with, are abandoning ship at this point 9 days after the election.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's pretty fascinating to see, because for me, looking at the Democratic primary, I think that coming out of that, people were supporting Biden because he wasn't Trump. But I think once you got the real true chance to have the two of them compared side by side, and not even in the debates, but just once Biden was clearly the nominee and we all knew Trump was already the incumbent, I think it became more apparent just how much of a polar opposite person Joe Biden is to Trump on almost every facet of his personality.
Right.
I mean, he really is like a good person, and his record shows that, and the way he's interacted with people throughout his career shows that, the way he interacts with people at events, whether it's, that wonderful story about the little boy with a stutter, or just kids or anybody that he interacts with, you see that it's about that person. And with Trump, you see that it's about Trump. And I think what's been great for me to watch is I had a lot of friends who were vehemently against Biden in the primary, vehemently, like to the point where a lot of them were saying, well, we won't even vote if it ends up being Biden. And they've almost all come around and been like, the more that we see him and hear from him, the more we realize how much we like him as a person and how much we trust him. And that's really, I think it's a testament to Joe Biden.
Yeah, it's huge.
You can come through that. You're maybe not the most extreme, progressive, colorful character in the bunch, and you come out and you're still this like rock solid, good human being, honest, straightforward, caring. And it's, it just obviously the other example in front of you is not.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the things that everybody, two things, the last thing I'll say on the two things that I think people thought was, well, one thing that people thought was going to happen and that Donald Trump was going to try to use against Joe Biden was, that creepy Uncle Joe factor, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't even do that.
They couldn't.
Because Democrats, because they knew Democrats would be like, you want to be the pot or the kettle.
Yeah.
and that would have been a thing, right? You'd never win that argument. And the other thing is that, we have to, and I posted about it the other day, about allowing people the opportunity to change. When Joe Biden lost Beau Biden a few years ago, and I know, Malynda, you talk about, allowing folks space to evolve. When you lose somebody, at like Joe Biden has in his career, wife, daughter, okay, that changed how his trajectory of his Senate career. And then, in the vice presidency, losing Beau, that has a profound impact on how you view certain things. This pandemic has changed, I'm sure, a lot of people's minds about healthcare in America, and employer-based healthcare. The idea that we have elevated politicians to celebrity status and or celebrities on a pedestal as if they're not real people, and not allowing them the opportunity to change goes right to what Ian was saying about how people when you are allowed somebody to explain themselves fully and or change over time, that is the mark of a good politician. We saw Barack Obama do it on marriage equality. You have to be able to give people space to move, and the moment that we don't allow somebody to do that, you're already closing them off for progress. And you're already not giving them the opportunity to make amends for some problematic things that they may have done in the past, and learn from them, and make progress at the same time.
Agreed. And I talk about that all the time, but I do think there's obviously some people that lack the capacity for doing that. And Trump is one of those. So all of you listeners out there, I truly hope that you use your right and go vote. We're almost a week away from the election. But Ndidi, Ian, and Drexel, thank you so much for joining me this week. We'll be back again next week when we are 2 days out from the election and we'll all be sweating. Make sure you subscribe to We Need to Talk on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And we'll talk to you guys again next week. Bye.